Mm-hmm.
Sure.
All right, take two begins in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, welcome to the second attempt at recording this review. Like, um, it's one of those weeks. Like, hopefully not too terrible here. We tried to record this review, got about 10 minutes in, if that.
Less.
Yeah.
Significantly less.
I mean, like overall recording, including pre-banter and shit.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it's like, and then Petty Fan's equipment exploded again. I don't think we ever got around to setting up Ogre with everything.
I think Ogre's issue might be his wireless card.
Did we ever test that? Anyway, yeah. So welcome to the Fragments of Silicon reviews. This is West of Loathing, take 2. Right. All right. West of Loathing is an adventure RPG from the developer Asymmetric. Notable for their previous RPG, Kingdom of Loathing.
Which this takes place in sort of the same universe as?
Right, sort of, but maybe not.
It uses
really.
the same general mechanical system and style.
Right.
Kingdom of Loathing is a more classic fantasy-ish RPG, but it's sort of unique in that the art style is very stick figures and simple kind of thing you'd see doodled in a kid's binder in school or something. It it has a very snarky sense of humor that extends to like the elemental system in the game is hot and cold as you'd expect, but then it's rounded out with spooky stench and sleaze.
Right.
Which sure. And the currency in this universe is meat, which is among other things, other sources mined from the ground.
Yeah.
And in this game, one of the things you can get fairly on is a hunk of unrefined meat ore.
Yeah, meat is basically gold.
It's used for money. I think in Kingdom of Loathing, there is a hunger system or something, and it is used for that also.
Wouldn't be surprised. Now, even though I suppose we should define one of the main differences here, and that is Kingdom of Loathing is actually a browser-based multiplayer role-playing game, or at least quasi. I'll be honest, I've never actually played Kingdom of Loathing. I've certainly known about it forever and a day.
Yeah, me neither. I've heard about it. It keeps coming up when I'm reading things about RPGs, but I've never actually played it myself.
And it's been around for a very long time, 13 years or so, maybe 14. It debuted in 2003. And it's still going today. It's still updated. It's still supported. I'm not sure how many people are playing it these days, but obviously it's enough of a community to keep the game going. Then again, with the art style and everything, it's not a big.
It definitely gives the impression of a low maintenance, or not low maintenance, but low time and effort needed. I guess low maintenance works. Project, which doesn't mean it is. I mean, there's servers and stuff, but
right on the technical side of things,
it's not like you need to hire an artist to spend hours spriting up all the possible poses of a new monster when they're mostly stick figure type stuff.
Yeah, I'm like the art style, is going to be off-putting. I'm not going to lie. It's like,
Mhm.
not
No, dude, get used to XKCD. You can get used to this.
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. It's just, you're not going to be playing this game for the graphics, not in terms of fidelity or anything. Like, the graphics look perfectly okay. They are stick figures, children's drawing kind of dealies.
They
And
look okay, but they look okay in a way that it wouldn't really matter if you were playing it on a really top-end monitor or kind of a crappy old monitor.
Right. I mean, that's not the real draw here. Like, or, and indeed, the game pokes fun at this. Like, that's the real meat, if you will, of the game. Its sense of humor, its writing. Like, it's honestly some of the sharpest writing I've encountered in a very long time. It's not, it's not deep or epic, or it's nothing in the traditional RPG vein. It's very snarky. It's very sardonic. It's very, making fun of RPG conventions. Making fun of conventions in general. Like, one of the options in this game is a colorblind mode. The joke being is
the game is already in black and white almost entirely.
That's the kind of humor you're dealing with here. Not all of it. I mean, it's like the humor can get quite adult at times. Like, a significant portion the way through, you deal with a hippie cult that's hopped up on mushrooms. Like, yeah, we're going full drug reference here, and I'm like, in partaking in alcohol is a regular occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
Mhm.
although, another, like, from what I've been reading, a difference between Kingdom of Loathing and West of Loathing is Kingdom of Loathing, you can actually get drunk. Like, if you drink too much alcohol, you will, you'll actually be in a drunken stupor. You can't do that in West of Loathing. You can't overindulge in anything.
Well, you're
Like-
a cowboy. I mean, cowboys don't get badly drunk. They just get drunk enough to beat up people in bars.
Well, well, it's like, getting drunk here is actually how you get attributes, like, or one of the ways you get attributes. Like, there's actually 3 systems. There's your liver, there's your spleen, and I'm trying to remember the third one. In the menu, I'm like, is it muscle? Like, goddamn, I hate it when that happens.
Stomach, liver, and spleen.
Yeah, there we go.
And
Stuff.
it's muscle, mysticality, and moxie are the 3 actual attributes of, instead of like strength, dexterity, and charisma, or strength and talent, whatever.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They're given a much more Western twang.
Yeah.
Which I think it's similar to that in Kingdom of Loathing too, but I'm not sure.
Probably. But, I mean, I suppose that's another thing that this game has going for it. It's taking place in the Old West, and that's just not a setting you see a whole lot.
No, it's a fairly uncommon RPG setting.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's...
Not unheard of, but...
No, but it's certainly more unique than Kingdom of Loathing, because satirizing the high fantasy role-playing game probably was fresher in 2003.
Yeah.
But, we've seen it. We've definitely seen that happen over the course of, several decades, because, Lord of the Rings, Dungeons and Dragons, typical fantasy setting, yada, yada, yada. Like,
Mm-hmm.
West of Loathing, the Wild West is just, I'm trying to think if there's any other, like, Western flavored RPGs out there, like Old West. And, like, nothing's coming immediately to mind. I'm sure it exists, but I'm drawing a blank here.
Yeah, I believe there are some, but I can't think of any.
I know there maybe one or two, but I can't think of them off the bat.
Yeah. And in spite of the satirization and everything, this does play out, like a fairly typical CRPG, Western RPG. Like if you're familiar with those systems, you'll get what this game is. And indeed, I think that was one of probably my biggest problem with the game. I'm like, on a mechanical level, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's a point-and-click game with combat. With turn-based combat that's fairly simple. And you can tell that the combat isn't intended to be the major focus, or if it is, it's on a smaller scale, because so far as I can tell, every battle is an individual puzzle, basically. And you get fresh starts at every battle, except for consumable items like dynamite or cactus beer.
Right. It's also a good beginner's RPG, I suppose. Because there are things to keep track of, but there's not a lot of system intricacies that you'd expect in a much larger RPG, JRPG or Western.
It does have an option where you can, by default, you level up all your experience is allocated effectively manually or automatically. So you the game tries to give you a well-balanced build. You can, if you feel like it, micromanage that instead.
I'd recommend turning that off, because I'm like, you're probably going to want certain skills before other skills. Like, it's probably a good idea to upgrade skills like lock picking and safe cracking early, because you're going to encounter a lot of locked doors. For example.
Yeah. Assuming you get those skills, because it's possible to miss those.
Right. Let's see. This is also, it's got a lot in common with modern Dungeons and Dragons systems, in that there are a shit ton of perks.
Yeah, it's almost like a Bethesda, I think, thing.
Right. You do certain actions, you will get certain attributes.
So, for example, you can get an increase to your maximum hit points if you walk into the spiky cactuses repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you've developed thick skin from walking into the spiky cactuses repeatedly.
Yeah. One of the most useful I found was the spittoon hand. Put your hand in I'm not sure if it was enough spittoons or a certain.
I think it's
spittoon.
all of them.
But
it's enough. It's
It's like, and I actually got a whole bunch of elemental resistances.
So basically, Final Fantasy II, except somehow even more ridiculous, but makes sense.
It's not Final Fantasy II, because none of this occurs in battle. It's actions outside of battle that give you your attributes. And in general, they're positive, but you might encounter some negative attributes, mostly by reading forbidden books.
Which I believe those are a specific ending route. If you read a ton of the forbidden books, the Nex Mex books, you mean?
Yes.
Which is get it? It's like necromancy in Mexican instead of Texas Mexican.
Right. You're gonna find a shit ton of that wordplay. I think a lot of jokes, very wry sense of humor. Another example, when you walk up to a medical tent in one of the areas, your character will say, "Oh, I guess this is the math tent." The humor is probably not going to make you laugh out loud, but you're probably going to be smiling a good way through the game if you enjoy this humor. If you don't, I'm going to say it right now: avoid this game like the plague. This is the fucking glue that holds this game together. The humor.
Yeah.
It's like, if you don't like what this game is offering in that arena, don't apply, because like as an actual game, it's fairly average.
Yeah, you're not in this for exciting gameplay so much as for interesting humor and possibly some character stuff if you're into the characters.
Yeah, can't even say like the story either. I mean, because there really isn't a story. Like, it's more, I suppose the overall plot, your grand quest is to get the railroad to San Francisco.
Yeah, you're going west because the farm you grew up on sucks.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Like, you're trying to stake your fortune, and that's all your motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from what you then develop yourself throughout the stuff you encounter.
Right. Like I said, it's not like this game isn't so much a grand plot. It's a whole bunch of like subplots or encounters that may intertwine, and there's several long running, like there's the Necromancer, there's the cows. Like,
cows are one of the major enemies in this game because a few years ago or recently the cows come home.
Yeah.
And these are terrifying monster cows that destroyed a lot of things.
Yeah. Like, they pretty much devastated the entire area. Like, there's the El Vibro civilization. Their take on the typical lost, ancient, very advanced civilization.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'll admit, I didn't complete every side quest and I didn't unlock everything, but I did beat the game. Like,
yeah, the game is fairly short if you are just trying to beat the game.
Yeah, I'm like, getting to the final cutscene area isn't going to take you very long. Like, but once again, that's not really what this is about. It's about, well, side quests, right? And exploration. That's another big one. Like, you're doing a lot of exploration, even if you don't really have free range exploration. I mean, the way it works is, you
talk to people, basically.
Yeah. Well, you talk to people, you wander the area, you climb up towers and use binoculars to find areas, and then you go to those areas, or you have a quest to go to that area. That's how you unlock stuff here. And that's the that's the lion's share of the adventure here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And some of the quests are pretty involved. Some of them are not. Some involve making sure you have an item that you might have sold off or gotten rid of a long time ago.
Because it's tricky to tell what's important.
So cough, cough, hold on to everything?
No, because sometimes you need to sell stuff to be able to afford things.
Yeah, like...
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I'm like...
For example, early in the game, you can trade a pin for a dynamite. You might think this sounds like a good trade until you find yourself needing another pin to pick another lock.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that kind of thing, and geez, I was thinking of something, but I've kind of forgotten what I was going for here. Like,
sorry.
I hate. It's fine. Like, but You can have multiple. That's right. That's right. I remember now. Inventory management. There is no inventory management. Like, you can carry as much shit as you want, and you're not encumbered. You're not doing micromanagement. You know, this is kind of the upside of simplification of RPG systems. You know,
Yeah.
and I'll be honest, I've never been a huge fan of that stuff. I get why it's there. It's more realistic. But I'm like, I've always found that kind of inventory management to be fucking tedious.
In some games, it's part of the challenge, but this game is not a game that particularly insists on challenging you that way.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. As far as challenge goes, like, the game can certainly have its spikes. Like, especially when you open up new areas, you know, you might encounter like 4 skull cows and they kill you very quickly.
Although usually you have to like select to go into, like, sometimes you don't have a choice but to select to go into battle, but
yeah, I suppose that's another thing. It really didn't seem like an option to run.
Yeah, it was either fight or die, basically.
Yeah, and I think Petty Fan has this strange walking on, or
yes, that's the thing.
Oh, stupid
Yeah,
walking.
you can go to your option, and you get it in your if you read all the books in your bookshelf on your room at the very beginning of the game, and then it tells you can go to options to turn off, because otherwise your legs will be walking and they will be dragging your body with them.
Man, whatever.
Yeah, yes.
And we have a taker on the walking alone, so it worked.
I wish we could show off the dancing montage that happens later, but that's like way later from where you are. That's like in the second part of the game. I'm like, yeah. The overall game can be broken up into like thirds. And that's based off of where the train is.
Like once you get the railroad past a certain point, it's
right.
The game progresses. Although there are a few points of no return pretty early on, but those are mostly semi-tutorial stuff, and also choosing your build, because you get a pretty decent amount of choices. I guess I'd say 3 main choices early on. I don't know how much one of them really affects much, because you have a choice of up to 4 characters you can bring with you, or I think you can go alone. You have a choice of different horses that you can buy, which I think can let you get into different areas that you couldn't normally get into. And you have, of course, at the very beginning of the game, you choose your class between the Cowpuncher, who is the fighter type, the Beanslinger, who is a wizard who casts spells using beans because Kingdom of Loathing, and the Snake Oiler, who is a sneaky social person who also has a pet snake that can inflict poison.
Yeah, I played as a Snake Oiler.
Same.
I believe I picked Cowpuncher.
Yeah, although my combat style was all around guns.
I'm a wizard person, so I took that.
You know, it's like I'm like, most useful skill I found was the triple shot, like, because
the skills you get depend on who you. Every character can equip a gun and a melee weapon, but yeah, the different skills available to you in combat depend on what your class is.
Yeah, and here's an example of the combat. Like, Petty Fan is actually going to have to use a melee attack to get around the barrel. You know, there is some tactical thought here. Not a whole lot. It's, again, you know, the game is about as simple as its art style. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but
yeah, and the order you do stuff in matters sometimes, because if you do stuff in a certain order, sometimes you'll find you can't do something else.
Right. This game is encouraged for multiple playthroughs. not just, you know, and another pivotal pick is your partner or your partner. You've got the girl who's fairly average in her stats.
She's a support sniper type.
Right. And I believe she levels up based on fighting cows.
Yeah, she only gets experience from cows.
Yeah. That's her back.
Because her parents' ranch was burned down, and her parents and little sibling were killed by cows.
Right. And
so cows are basically like chickens from the Fable series.
Something like that. There's the doctor who is drunk. She only levels up based on killing skeletons.
Mm-hmm.
But she's a healer.
Yeah. And then there's Crazy Pete.
He's the default option if you decide to progress before you do the side quests that let you get the other two.
Yeah. He's basically the most useless of the three.
He does give you some minor bonuses, though. I forget what they are.
Yeah.
And there is actually a fourth option.
Yeah. That being said, there is a way to increase the difficulty, and that's with the hard hat. It's a literal hat made out of stone.
But yeah, and to get that, you have to trade a special item to Crazy Pete in the first town, and go back to the mine and get the hard hat.
I had the option of getting the hard hat, and I'm like, do I want to make this game more difficult? No, I do not. It's like I'm on a timer here.
Yeah, it increases the health and strength of monsters mostly, I think.
Yeah, I'm like, it's not. Yeah.
Oh man, you're killing Gary?
Gotta get that XP though.
You don't have to get that XP though. He's the fourth partner.
Oh, well then. Let's just wiggle up the stairs and...
I'm not kidding. His name is Gary. Well, the thing is, when you're recruiting the doctor, when you go into the doctor's house, which you have to do a couple things to get in there, she has a book from which you can learn Goblinish, and
Goblin tongue.
If you talk to him, it turns out he just wants to get out of here.
Yeah, but 200 meat.
Yeah. I will tell you right now, Goblin Tongue is one of the most useful abilities in the game, not surprisingly, because you encounter a lot of goblins.
Teddy, you play 14. You know goblins are all right. Except those dirty Illuminati goblins. I'm on to you and your Alexander using ways.
Also, the goblins in this are similar to Warhammer orcs in that they are fungus. So you get a fungicide that can kill a goblin in one hit.
Right. Because apparently they're based off of the Warhammer 40k idea of goblins.
Is it 40k or regular war? Anyway, in one of the Warhammer things, orcs are based on fungus.
Right. And goblins are their lower servants, not the lowest. Those are the snotlings. But yeah. I'm not sure if it's a direct Warhammer 40k reference, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was. The music. The music is,
old-timey?
Yeah, it's very period appropriate for the most part.
And it's mostly, diegetic?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, there's music in the very beginning of the game that you can turn off because it's playing on the phonograph in your room, and there's music in the saloon where there's the auto piano, there's the piano player.
Yeah, I'm like, except for one track, and that's the disco track. Like, once again, it's a track you'll encounter like about second phase of the game. In a few areas, and that's kind of the joke here, or at least I think in one area. The other is look at these crazy dancers and look at their crazy dance music. And
Still, a little bit of weirdness doesn't stick out in this that much.
Yeah, but otherwise, like the music in a saloon sounds like the music you'd hear in a saloon. You know, piano.
It's like
like-
old timey Western Saloon .wav from some old sound library.
Right. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but it's not the point, especially in a game like this.
Right. Excuse me.
Like,
but yeah, there's a lot to explore and find, and sometimes you'll do things like you can get a shovel and then you can shovel stuff up or dig in holes, or
or a pickaxe or a
crowbar that you can use to open things that are sealed shut.
Yeah. That gets into field encounters. So as you wander the deserts, or you're heading to a destination, you will encounter, random, not just enemies.
It's a random encounter chart in the true old D&D sense, where no, it's not necessarily a monster. You might have to roll on the random prostitutes table.
I'm like, I don't think I ever encountered one of those, but I encountered a lot of crates.
Yeah.
A lot of crates that required a crowbar, and had supplies in it.
Right, and you can get a crowbar early in the game, so maybe keep that.
Yeah, I'm like, there are other things like the varmint skinning knife, which will allow you to craft skins out of certain fallen enemies like snakes and cows.
Yeah, a lot of this, the semi-tutorial area is basically you got on a literal turnip wagon heading out west, and then fell asleep and fell off.
Yeah, you literally fell off the turnip truck.
And then you have to get enough money to get a horse to continue. And there's a lot even in this area, there's a lot of neat stuff that you can do that'll, if you do all of it and pull it off well, you are better equipped for the remainder of the game.
Let's see. Is there anything else that we need to cover here? Because, we could probably talk endlessly about the minutia of the game, but
I think the minutia is kind of like the best part. It's got a lot of really neat little things, and I know I found the art style, because it's so low detail, somehow I found it kind of easy to relate with and imagine things on.
I'm like, as I said, this game really plays to your pen and paper sensibilities.
Yeah.
It is worth noting that while there is no actual pen and paper RPG of Kingdom of Loathing or West of Loathing, there is a card game called Mr. Card Game that's based off of Kingdom of Loathing that came out 2012.
I think I've heard of that.
I think it has the same art style and all of that. I don't know too much about it. But yeah, I'm not I'm really I suppose another note is we are planning on interviewing the developers of this game next month, I believe. I'll have to check the calendar on that one exactly. But I'm really interested about Intentions, because I'm wondering what inspired them to make an Old West satirization RPG here. I mean, I can guess some of it because that's kind of their style. That's kind of their thing. But, it's also an offline RPG, which is quite the radical departure from Kingdom of Loathing. I don't know if you like Kingdom of Loathing, you'll like West of Loathing. Presumably you would, because it's got the same style and all that stuff, the same humor. But I'm like, this is an offline single player RPG versus a quasi massively multiplayer RPG, and that's quite a difference. So, worth weighing your options there. So finally we come to price, and the game is $11.
That sounds like a very good price for this.
Right.
Unless you get super hung up on graphics, in which case there's probably no way to sell this game to you because, stick figures.
Right.
But this game has a decent, it's a fairly short for an RPG if you play straight through and only do the story, but there's a lot of side quests.
Yeah, I'm there's there's a lot of stuff here to keep you occupied, for more than say 50, I couldn't really gauge how long you could spend here because you could do multiple playthroughs, for example,
and to try out the different things that you when you're playing through as one character class or with one set of skills or doing things in a certain order, you're gonna find things that you couldn't do, and you might want to play through again to try doing things differently.
Right, or you might be one of those people who have multiple save throughs going at any one time in case you take one choice and then take another.
Mm-hmm.
Done that. Also worth noting, the game is at time of recording on sale. 10% is, so it's $9.89. It's if you pick it up now, pick it up when it's $11. It's not that much of a price differential where I'd say, it would make or break anything.
Well, and I think this is a pretty good deal anyway, even for full price. So, I mean, Twilight, I guess.
Twilight. Did you get a chance to play this game?
Yeah.
So, what were your thoughts on it?
I really enjoyed it for its simplicity, basically. It's all you can do is just, like you said, it reminded me of a Western RPG, and really fond of those. See now, trying to gather my thoughts here. Overall, I liked it, and I'd like to go to play it some more at some time. And
finally,
we could use more Western RPGs. I mean, Old West RPGs, in my opinion.
More games in the Western setting in general.
Yeah.
But the last high-profile one was Red Dead.
Yeah, Red Dead Redemption is and then there was Gun from Activision, and
Less said about that, the better.
I guess there's probably some people might be trying to avoid it because they want to avoid any potential race issues, which this game kind of sidesteps by everyone being a stick figure.
Yeah. Also worth noting, the game is pretty gender balanced.
Yeah, and you can play as a male or a woman and change your name. That is pretty much the entirety of character creation.
Yeah, I guess something that was lost when we had to restart the episode is I actually did have the option to choose between a man or a woman.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of female characters in the game, and all sorts of roles.
Mm-hmm.
Something worth noting. So, it's just not something that really made much of a difference. At least not from what I saw.
Yeah,
same.
Also worth noting, there is no extra packages on Steam. All you can buy is the game. I'm not sure if the OST is out there, on Bandcamp or something, but it's certainly not on Steam for purchase. And I think an art book would just be a couple pages.
Yeah.
Finally, Petty Fan, what's your impression of the game?
It's interesting, though I'm not much of an RPG in this style guy. But I could definitely see someone who's be more into this, getting a lot more out of it than I would.
Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. I don't think we mentioned this specifically, but it might have been obvious. There are dialogue trees, and sometimes there are options on them that you need to have certain amounts of various social abilities before you can do properly.
Yeah, I did a little bit with like the card game thing.
Yeah. Like the more gumption you have, I think it's gumption, you have the more extravagantly you can bet, and then when you don't win or when you get worse cards, you can teach the people who are playing cards that you actually won.
Hornswoggling.
Because you see the jacks are worth 9.
there's all sorts of things like that, and it's not just like the three main systems. Like for example, a lot of the random enemy encounters, if you have enough hornswoggling, you can trick the enemy into either going away or you can steal an item from them, basically. Anyway, I suppose if I had to give a rating, about an 8 out of 10. Now, I wish I could go higher, but I can't ignore the fact that the game itself is pretty bland, pretty shallow and pretty limited. And I understand it's a means to an end, to the vehicle, to the humor, to the everything else, but it can get pretty dull at times, especially if you're grinding for certain items.
This would be one of those short burst games.
Depends, because I found the humor enough to compensate for the vanilla mechanics.
Yeah, same.
That's kind of why I had the qualifier. If you don't like the humor of this game, don't buy it. Because, that's what's really making this game, in my estimation. It's the writing. And I know people who don't like that. Who don't like when the writing is carrying the weight of a game versus the gameplay mechanics.
Not that the gameplay mechanics are bad, they're just nothing particularly innovative.
Right. Well, it's not even innovative. They're not particularly interesting in and of themselves. Like,
although there is a mode, there's a geek mode or something you can activate as an option that'll give you way more detail about all the mechanics that are happening in battles. Normally you get a very streamlined view of just, hey, this will probably do about this much damage, and then you do the thing and then it does about that much damage.
right.
But you can get like a full Diablo style or whatever style.
Yeah. I'm just saying, it's a system that matches its range, but I have to.
Yeah, it's not super complicated.
Yeah. And I have to note that having super complicated battle systems or intricate whatevers is a part and parcel of RPGs. And this has its own, but that's in the stat mechanics and the branching paths and the writing and all that stuff. The actual, say, combat, pedestrian. It's about the least interesting part of this game, if I'm being honest. There's a few battles where, especially the reenactment battles, that actually require some strategic thinking, but they don't come up often. So that's about my final take of the game. One of the most solid games I've played all year. Well worth playing.
There are definitely segments of the population that this won't appeal to.
Yeah,
but if you're not in one of those segments, it's pretty highly recommended, I think.
Yeah, it's like, but yeah, if you like, a lot of this is going to come down if you to taste. Like, if this isn't lining up with your taste, I really couldn't recommend it. On the basis of a game. Like, if you thought the silly walk was funny, and were sold on that, then yeah, you probably already put down $10 on this.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like, right. So,
Please.
yes. Anyway, I think that'll about do it for this review. Be sure to tune in, right after the musical interludes, as we got our second review to get through. And then we take a break, and then we'll be back for our third review. So, coming up next, we'll be reviewing Spiral Splatter. This will take about 10 minutes at most.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we have to wait for Petty Fan to get into position since he was playing the game until, I gave the signal there. Until however many minutes it is, I do wish you good gaming.